Alright, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to make this VJ loop. So, of course, there's some audio added into that. Here's another sort of version of it that I've made previously recording this tutorial. As you can see, though, we're using some metaballs and we're using some interesting emission shaders on some sort of globe things. So what we're going to do is just open up Blender. We'll go General, and we're going to delete the default cube. And now all we want to do is we'll delete the light as well. We'll just come in here, we've deleted everything besides the camera. We will add a UV sphere mesh. Then let's go into edit mode and make sure we have face mode selected. And we can go up here to wireframe as well. So now if you just click on an orthographic projection, you can drag over bottom half, press X, and then we'll just delete faces. So now we have sort of a hemisphere here. And we can do is we can go ahead and go into our modifiers, add a modifier, which is going to be a wireframe. And now you can sort of see that effect that we saw in the initial renders. So we'll take this wireframe and we're actually going to duplicate it by pressing Shift-D, Escape, and Scale. And then we'll Shift-D again, Escape, and scale that down one more time. Okay, so for these inner ones, we're just going to want to animate them to go around 360 degrees. So the way inner one, let's come over here and go to Item, do Rotation, and if we just hover our mouse over rotation and press I, it's going to keyframe it automatically. We can come down to 250 and we can set our Z rotation at 360 degrees. And we'll press I on that, and now you can see that it's going to rotate. Only thing we need to change is select our two keyframes, press T, go to linear. That's going to make sure that it loops continuously without us noticing the seam. And we'll do the same thing here with this one. So Z0, that's it, hover and press I. And then let's go to the end and let's do negative 360 so we get a little bit of sort of overlapping action happening. So we'll do the same thing with pressing T, going to linear. And now you can see that we have two different sort of things going on there. And I like how small they are. But on this bigger one, what we're going to do is we're going to make the thickness a little bit higher just to give us more to work with geometry-wise. And we're going to add boundary, which is just going to make sure that we have a closed shape all the way around. And we're going to add one more modifier to this, which is subdivision surface. So we'll do, I think, 3 for the subdivision surface, and we can right-click it, shade smooth, and now we're starting to get that effect that we saw in the renders I showed you. So what we want to do now is we want to add in some metaballs, which are going to give us a really interesting effect, creating some glass that creates a lot of interesting reflections. So metaball, ball, and now we can scale this up and down. And we'll just bring in the sphere just to see what we're working with, and that looks good to me. And what's interesting about metaball is if you add another one and scale it down a little bit, if you move them close to each other, they sort of connect and have this interesting cohesive nature. So what we want to do is just sort of lay some of these out here. We can use Shift-D to duplicate them, or we can add new metaballs. And you just want to make sort of an interesting composition of metaballs here. So I kind of like to just do 4 and leave a little bit of space, make them relatively uneven. Just to add some interest, and maybe we'll add one more metaball here. So let's go ahead and add it off to the, you know what, let's add this one to the front somewhere. Okay, that seems pretty good to me. And now all you want to do is you just want to go to your main metaball, which can be easier to click in the outliner, go down here to metaball settings, and we want to do resolution quite a bit lower than this. And the lower your resolution is actually going to give you a better result. So let's go 0.05 and we'll match that with our render. Should be pretty good. So actually let's go 0.02 on our render. Because we're making these into glass, we want to make sure they're as smooth as possible. So now all we want to do is just keyframe each one of these to animate them sort of growing and shrinking. And the way we'll do that, just go to our 0 frame, select our initial metaball, and we can scale it. But first we're going to hover over the scale, press I, that's going to do the same keyframe as we talked about earlier, and now we can scale it up. Press I on a different frame, come over here, scale it down, press I, come over here, scale it up, press I. And really what you're looking for here is some randomness. So let's scale it down a little bit to really small now. Let's make it very small. And we'll press I. And let's make our viewport go to 0.2, just because we're getting a little bit of lag here. Perfect. Okay, and the only thing you want to make sure to think about here is that your 0 frame and your 250 frame are the same value. So 0.82, it needs to be 0.82 here, 0.82 and 0.82. And keyframe that. Now we can press play and we can sort of see what's going on with the metaball. Growing and shrinking, shrinking a little faster, growing faster. It's exactly what we're looking for, because these sort of seams are where we'll get some really interesting lighting. Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead and do that with all the other ones. So I'll check back with you once I've completed that. So now I've keyframed all of these metaballs, and if I press play, you'll see we get a pretty interesting morphing effect and some geometry here that's going to be great for reflections. Now we can add in those spheres one more time and sort of see how things are interacting. And as you can tell, we're getting sort of some overlap, but these metaballs are all going to be glass anyway, so it's sometimes good actually to have that intersection. So what we're going to do for that, for the metaballs, we'll set the material. So we want to click on the main metaball, and they're all going to actually assume the same material as the initial one. Let's name this material glass, and we'll turn our roughness all the way down, and we will turn the transmission all the way up. All the other things you need to do is make sure you have ambient occlusion and screen space reflections and refractions turned on, and I like to have bloom. It just helps sort of get an idea of what we're working with here. So now you can see if you go into look dev, we have a glassy-ish texture here. And now we just need to texture this hemisphere on the outside. So let's come down, do a new texture. We'll call this metal. We just want this to be sort of a shiny material. So you can either do a sort of silver. We'll turn the roughness down a decent amount, and we'll bring up our metallic. So we're just going to go with sort of a glossy-ish sort of gray value, something like that, and I'll bring the roughness down a little bit more. We just want to have something a little bit textured in our composition here. We'll go ahead and click on our inner sphere. Can't see it right now, but what we can do is we can disable our metaballs just for a moment. Create a new material on this, and we'll call this one a blue glow, and we're just going to do an emission texture. And for this color, let's go blue. And let's go with 10, should be good. And then on this one, we'll do a yellow glow. Do the same thing, emission texture, yellow, and 10. And now you can see if you kind of look inside here, there's some blue going on, some yellow going on, and if we press play, we're getting sort of an interesting lighting effect. So now we can turn the metaballs back on. And what we want to do next is add in a camera and some lights. So we already have the camera here, and my favorite thing to do for the camera is click on the camera button, come over here to view, and click on lock camera to view. And now you can just sort of move around the camera as if it was the viewport itself. And great. So now what I do is I like to drag over a little panel here, turn on 3D viewport, camera mode, scroll all the way across, do rendered view, and we'll turn off the lines. And so since we don't have any lights in there right now, you can't see anything, but we're going to fix that right now. So we'll go ahead and press Shift A, do a light, and I like to use area lights for this. It seems to give me the best result. Press G to move it around, and we'll put this one at the side. maybe a little bit bigger, something like that. And we'll make this blue, and we'll make it 10,000. What we're gonna do now is we're just gonna duplicate this, so Shift D will duplicate for us. And I love how that's looking, so let's make that a yellow light. It's got a good amount of glow on it. And now if we just sort of pause it here, we can start to see some interesting stuff happening. And one thing that you will notice is that you can't see those two glowing hemispheres inside. What we can do to see those is just go to cycles, and all of a sudden you already see a bunch more reflection and refraction going on. And we're just going to add in a couple more lights just to make sure that this is all looking the way we want it to. But first, we're going to go into our world, color, make it black. And now you can really get an idea of the look that we're creating. So let's add one more light as like sort of an underglow backlight kind of thing. And that's just going to be another area light, scale it up. And something that can be good on these is just move it back, press G, Z to get it down. And now we're getting a nice light from the back. And for this one, let's go ahead and make it, let's go blue on this and put this at 1,000 watts. And so that's just going to give us a nice little blue reflection. And then one more light I always like to add. It's kind of like a rim light, and this is reflective of a studio lighting setup. So just add the light and press S and press X. And that's just going to scale it on the X-axis to make a nice rectangle for us. And let's go G, move it here, and point it. And we can just sort of rotate it upright. And we'll make this one yellow, just add an accent. Let's bring it up a little bit. And lighting is really where this render sort of is made or broken. It's all about the lighting. It's a lot of black. It's sort of just a reflective surface. So if we make this 1,000, we're gonna get, hopefully that'll come up in the result. And what you can do here is you can just click on the light. Oops, come on. Click on the light here, we'll find it in the outliner. And if we turn it on and off, it looks like, yeah, we're adding in maybe some interesting reflections there. Let's move it over a little bit. Great. Okay, so now we've pretty much created our render. The only thing we need to do at this point is just animate our main hemisphere here. So how we'll do that is just go ahead and start at the 0 frame again, go to our item, and for rotation we'll press I, and then we're going to rotate it along the y-axis, so we want it to go back. So let's go ahead and go forward, enough frames that it gives it some space, and let's go back 90 degrees, and looks like that's the wrong direction, so negative 90 is going to get us a better result. Negative 90, hover over that, press I to keyframe it, and then let's have it rotating at that point. So that'll be rotating around the x-axis. So now we've got it sort of rolling back here, and then we want it to rotate. So to do that, let's go ahead and press R. Let's go to an orthographic view, press R, and we can do, maybe we'll do negative 360. And we'll just go ahead and keyframe that. And now we can see that it's doing some interesting rotation there. Coming back ultimately to right about where we wanted it to be. And then for the final frame, we just want to get it back to that 0, 0, 0. So go to the final frame, plug in 0, 0, 0, enter I when you're hovering over it. And we'll just watch that back real quick. It looks like we have a somewhat interesting result here that should be reflecting our geometry. Okay, so that's pretty much everything. Now all you need to do is go ahead and render it. So you're going to be using cycles. And Everything looks good so far. I just want to add this. We'll make it 512 because we want to get as many samples as possible, especially with reflecting lights this many times. And then some other things you can do that are worth thinking about is go to Compositing, use nodes, and let's do add an output, which is a viewer. So now we can see if we go back to here, we press render image. All right, so now we have a rendered image. This kind of gives us an idea of what our final result's going to look like. But more importantly, this allows us to go into our compositing tab and work around there. But I will say this gives us a good idea, and I'm pretty satisfied with what this looks like. So now we can go to compositing, and when you open up compositing, it's not going to look like this. It's going to look probably empty. So what you want to do is just make sure you click on use nodes, put your render layers into your composite, and then we'll do Shift A. We'll add an output, which is the viewer. And now we can see what we are working with here. And one thing you can do that'll make this look pretty interesting is if you add in a filter, a glare filter, then you can add streaks or you can do ghosts, which will definitely add some extra effect to your render. But for me, what I want to do here is just keep it clean. When I want to VJ with it, it makes it easier to have a cleaner result to work with. So my favorite way to render these days is I've been using a website called Concierge Render, which uses like 40,000 GPUs to render. Just log in, and now I can go ahead and go to File Manager, make sure my Blender file is saved, and go to Add Files and find your Blender file. Okay, open it up, upload super fast, click on Launch Render, and we want to go 2.8, animation 1 to 250, resolution is native, and samples, let's go with 512. Okay, and now we'll just press render. We can go to the job manager, and this will render super, super fast. Okay, so now we can see our render is done. So we can just download the zip, press save, and it's going to take a decent amount of time, but that's all right. Metaball2.zip. It was $3.66 to get it rendered here with Concierge Render. So it's not cheap, but with the amount of time it saves you, I mean, this would have been probably a 10-hour render on my machine. So it's saving me literally hours where I can be doing other things. So I definitely think it's worth it. So we'll just wait for this to download, and it should be pretty fast, but it takes a while because there are so many files. So there it goes. Go ahead and extract that to whatever folder you want to work in, and we'll extract that, and we just want to open up Premiere while that's extracting. Okay, so we'll just create a new project, and we can do it wherever you like to create your projects. Make it called Metaball22. And once this is open, we just want to go to Import Media, right-click, Import, and we will go to wherever we exported that zip file, which is in here for me. Click on one, make sure image sequence is selected, and open it. And now all you do is you drag it into the timeline, and we can see our result. So I'm pretty satisfied with that came out, actually. And now all we need to do is just export it. So when you're in Premiere, you can use any codec to export, MP4 or whatever, but I like to use Premiere and use sequences because it allows me to use the DXV codec, which is what Resolume uses. So we'll just do with alpha and change our export. So really good at file names, and wait for this to export, and that's it. So definitely let me know how you do with this. It's super easy, but it's a fun way to get to know Metaballs, get to know some lighting, and definitely once you get it into your VJing software, there's so many opportunities to use it. So we can even go in there real quick and just check out what that would look like. So we'll just take our file, and we will bring it in here. And now if we click on it, we can see it playing. If we just bring up that, and now we can add whatever effects we want to it. So we could add a moving kaleidoscope to it. And now suddenly we have a really, really interesting VJ loop that's going to loop very predictably every time, and it's going to create some really interesting stuff for you, and you can change things around. But the point is, you're getting a really, really interesting base to work with as far as your DJ or your VJ workflow, and it's definitely a fun one to do as well, play around with the lighting. So anyhow, let me know if you want to see more of my stuff in Resolume. I can show you sort of my techniques here. But also, let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I can help you out with anything. So thanks for watching, and have a nice day.